Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar, A Roadmap to Expedited Fills, in which we will teach you several tips on how to get your drug quickly without falling off the quality cliff. We will be answering your questions at the end of this presentation. To ask a question, select the word bubble that should appear in the toolbar at the right of your screen. When you do this, a field where you can type your question will appear. These questions will be sent to our team, displayed and answered by your speaker, Stephen Gardner. You will also have access to the PDF of this presentation. To access these, select the document icon, and all the included documents will appear for you to download. If you enjoyed this webinar, I hope you'll join us again in July for our next one. Our QC team will share 3 solutions for successful method transfer and answer all of your questions in regards to method transfers, qualifications, and validations. Our speaker for today is Stephen Gardner. He is the Project Management Supervisor at Berkshire Sterile Manufacturing, and he has helped direct 4 COVID-19 projects to a timely and compliant completion. He has a lot of experience in fill finish from start to end and will be a helpful resource for you today. Without further ado, I will now hand this presentation off to our speaker, Stephen Gardner.
Thank you, Sarah, for the great introduction. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Steve Gardner. I'm the Project Management Supervisor for Berkshire Sterile Manufacturing. I oversee all of our client projects. Today, I'll be going through some tips and common questions on how we successfully managed a series of expedited COVID-19 fills and delivered a quality drug on a shortened timeline. First, we want to go over the webinar takeaways. Item number 1, what to ask a CMO. Number 2, what happens in an expedited sterile fill finish. And item 3, how to prevent falling off a quality cliff, are all items that we want to be able to answer at the end of this webinar. First, what to ask your CMO. We've broken this down into 5 subsections. The first subsection is, do they expedite? This should be a clear-cut answer, either a yes or a no. You should be wary of a maybe from your CMO. They should be able to confidently answer your question, even after needing a day or so to gather an answer from the group. But it should be clear either way. Next, you should go over what their structure is to expedite. Your CMO's structure should never reduce QA requirements or skip or reduce qualifications or test into compliance. They should have a clear structure involving high-level stakeholders with an increased oversight from all departments. You should look for a heavy involvement from the management team. At BSM, we take a tiered approach. The initial structure will be a small team made up of subject matter experts and will broaden over time to include more people. Quality, in the form of quality control and quality assurance, should always be involved from the very beginning to ensure compliance and a quality product at the end. You should ask what their QA oversight involves. From the drafting of documents to the final release, QA needs to be involved in the entire process. During the manufacturing process, formulation and filling, quality assurance should be on the floor with active oversight. Ensuring a contemporaneous review of documentations will ensure that errors are corrected on the spot rather than days later. Involving both the CMO's QA and your own in the drafting and execution process greatly increases the quality of the output and decreases common fail modes and mistakes from the very beginning. You should ask next, what is their fill capacity? When considering expediting a fill with your CMO, the number of units that you need and the fill range should be something that your CMO is very comfortable with. Knowing that a fill size fits in your CMO's comfort zone not only breeds confidence in your team, but also ours. It also lets common failures be addressed in advance, leading to a smoother process overall. The final question you should ask your CMO is, how will they expedite review and release? Outsourced release testing from your CMO should be confirmed for expediting before execution, and any time frame should be communicated to all parties. Expectations for your review should be communicated directly with the responsible QA parties, clearly and concisely before execution. Your CMO should already have a pathway in place, or one that is easily altered, for the following items: document sharing for large or confidential files, providing updates to reviewed documents and responding to comments and questions, and discussing non-conformance events if there are any. Both parties' expectations for timelines should be discussed well in advance to include full release or even potentially conditional release. This will take a lot of focus early on, since expediting review and release of a GMP batch can throw out of sync a well-oiled machine that is a quality assurance department. So now, what happens next after you've chosen a CMO to expedite with? There are 5 critical teams at your CMO. They're your process engineers, materials management, the manufacturing group, quality control, and quality assurance. They are all driven by one coach, your project management team. This may be one project manager or multiple. Your CMO project manager should have frequent contact with your team or designated contact. If you have a large team yourself, it's usually best to have a single point of contact of your own as well. Don't be surprised if your project gets a little extra level of attention if you're expediting a new filler project with a CMO you already have a relationship with. This just means they've identified this as a place where more resources would be advantageous. Let your project management team drive their team. If something stalls, reach out to them and see if there's anything you can do to help. Oftentimes, they're just waiting for an answer back from their team, and there's no need to worry. Next, we'll go over the 3 stages of drug manufacturing. The first stage is the planning and preparation stage. There are 4 critical teams made up of the process engineering group, quality control, materials management, and quality assurance. Your process engineers will be working diligently through the tech transfer process and developing a batch record or production record for manufacturing. You should ensure that your specifications are in line at this point for both process engineering to include in the batch record and quality control to verify and do any necessary qualification or feasibility. At this stage, ensure that your quality control counterparts at your CMO have any materials and information that they need to complete testing as soon as possible. Make sure that your subject matter experts are available for any questions or issues that may arise. Sometimes these are simple and just arise in the differences in a method between researching and manufacturing organization just simply because of machinery. Work through these issues with your CMO and you'll get smooth results. Your materials management group can often be the rate limiting factor to drug manufacturing. Both you and your CMO should be flexible on sourcing of materials. Leverage as much as you can from the inventory of your CMO. Look for alternative methods of procurement, such as through another organization that you already work at. When all else fails, try to make selections from your CMO's inventory. If you're interested to see what they carry and if it matches your project needs, just ask. Any CMO will gladly provide a list of their commonly stocked items for your use. Finally, your quality assurance group should begin reviewing any of the quality documents that they'll later be releasing. Batch records, test methods, protocols, all should be sent to QA for a preliminary review to avoid any future questions or delays. Stage 2 is the execution stage, obviously the most exciting. Manufacturing will formulate, filter, and fill the batch, and quality control will execute any in-process testing if required. Quality assurance on-the-floor oversight will drive to ensure any errors are corrected or eliminated. If you're interested in how BSM conducts manufacturing, we have another great webinar done by our CEO and co-founder, Sean Kinney. There he discusses conceptions and debunks each of them. The final stage of drug manufacturing is the review and release process. During this stage, you should resist any anxiety and not worry when updates seem to slow down. Manufacturing group will execute visual inspection, occurring shortly after filling. Your results should be communicated to you in a timely manner. Quality control should provide updates on sample submissions and testing execution, and any issues should be discussed as soon as possible. If certain results, such as identity, concentration, purity, should be expedited or prioritized, you should communicate this during the planning phase and reiterate it here. Finally, quality assurance begins the final review and release of executed protocols and batch records. This should start immediately following the execution of the fill, and communication of nonconformance defense should be regular, if there are any. If you have any concerns, discuss them up front or ask for clarification. Trust your CMO partner QA and limit the desire to micromanage. This will not only delay, but it will also frustrate. Some key items in this stage are to limit the critical items to 3 or less. Discuss them internally first and come into agreement on what the absolute critical items are. Please don't change them until they're complete unless absolutely necessary. Having gone over these 3 stages, we'll go through some case studies. Here you can see a standard fill timeline against 4 of our first COVID-19 treatment executions. You can see the standard fill time is around 128 days, with an equal amount of time in both stage 1 and stage 3. For the 4 COVID-19 fills, you can see we drastically reduced the amount of time in both stage 1, while stage 3 remained stable at 21 days due to a standard release time frame for sterility. You can see we were able to execute review of batch records and closure of nonconformance events in the time that it took for our contract testing labs to complete sterility testing. This should be a goal for any of your expedited fills. The reason we were able to have such a short stage 1 is due to having a very clear and defined tech transfer document developed by our process engineering department. This document laid out all of our client specifications and expectations clearly from the get-go, and this was an end-all be-all document that drove stage 1. Next, we'll go over some tips on how to prevent falling off the quality cliff. First, we want to go over what is the quality cliff. The quality cliff is the dark side of the path that all drug manufacturing follows, where project death looms just over the horizon. Falling off the quality cliff may result in rejected batches, missing critical delivery deadlines, out of specifications, deviations, any items with critical impact to the product. Tip 1. Review the trail. Perform a thorough review of potential CMOs prior to signing. Ask the essential questions we listed earlier, and compare and contrast results from CMOs or answers from CMOs. Tip 2. Bring your own map when traveling down the expedited path. Know your stuff. Ensure that your methods are robust and ready for transfer. Provide thorough details for your product and process design, as well as strategies to mitigate risk in the process. Make sure that your specifications are appropriate and you've got confidence in them. If you're not confident in your specifications, discuss internally about whether they bring anything to the release process. Give a quick but thorough review of quality documents. Remember, expediting is a two-way street. You should be able to expedite the same manner in which your CMO does. Tip 3. Train your driver. Try to approve your batch record a few days in advance of the fills to prevent deviation. This will give process engineers time to train anyone in manufacturing who will be involved in your process. Have your process engineers in the formulation to ensure proper training and execution from the manufacturing staff. Be available for issues that may arise during formulation. You should empower a single individual from your organization to be the sole point of contact. Make sure that they have a method to reach your CMO, and your CMO can reach them. Tip 4 is to avoid road bumps. Be flexible with materials where you can. Use what's in stock and already released. This will greatly speed up any material delays. Use already validated equipment and processes at your CMO. These will be items that they're readily trained on and familiar with. Tip 5 is to not distract your Sherpas. These are generally your process engineers and your project managers, the ones who are in constant contact with you and are constantly getting you and feeding you information. Follow up, but don't annoy and micromanage. Avoid any last-minute changes when you can. At the last minute, try to stick to must-haves for changes and avoid nice-to-haves. And finally, tip 6 is to not look down. You should stay positive during the expedited process. Enjoy the view and encourage progress as it occurs. Give positive feedback to your CMO and to your own team. It's greatly appreciated. Be proud of the journey that you're taking and undertaking on your own. In recap, you should now have a series of questions of what to ask your CMO to ensure a successful and timely fill finish result when expediting. We've gone over the 3 stages of what happens in an expedited sterile fill finish project. And we've gone over some tips on how to prevent falling off the quality cliff. At this time, we'll conclude and we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Steve, for that wonderful presentation. In just a moment, we're going to switch the monitor over to display your questions, and Steve will go through and answer all of these for you. So go ahead and put your questions in if you haven't already. We are going to take a minute to go and display those for you, and then we'll start answering them.
So the first question we have was, is it possible to release a product before sterility results come back? Due to BSM's own process, sterility is really confirming that our process as a sterile fill finish site met specifications. So we do not release product prior to sterility results. However, we have partnered with organizations like Sharp Clinical Services, where we do ship for depoting, kitting, and labeling prior to receiving sterility results. So I hope that answers that question. The next question is, can we see batch records prior to QA review? At BSM, we take a module-based approach for batch records. So that means your batch record is split up into several much more manageable sections. So we prioritize formulation and filling modules, and we generally will upload those to our SharePoint as soon as the preliminary QA review is done. That gives a couple of, generally about 2 extra weeks for our clients to review batch records prior to the release of the product. And in general, the last module that is uploaded is the quality control micro section, since that's waiting for sterility. And question 3. The next question, do you have to do all the release testing at BSM, or can you do this at a contract lab? That's a good question. So we stick with just doing sterility for human use drug product. That's the minimum amount of testing we need to do. Any other testing could be outsourced by our clients as they see fit. So whether that's going back to a drug substance manufacturer or through a third-party contract lab such as Eurofins SGS or another lab of the client's choosing. So 4th question, how do you handle raw material ID testing for expedited fills and bioburden testing and pre-filtration? So I'm going to start with bioburden. So we do bioburden testing and pre-filtration testing in-house. So that really speeds up our time frame there, since we don't need to ship it out for another lab or party to do. So generally, that's done within 5 days of the sample being pulled. For raw materials, like I mentioned in earlier, we really like to push clients towards what we already have in-house and released. Uh, but we can do raw material ID testing through any of our contract laboratories. They work with us for expedited fills hand in hand. And then we also look to do as much ID testing for raw materials in-house as possible, whether that's through just doing FTIR or utilizing one of the many compendial ID methods that a lot of raw materials have. I hope that answers that question. All right. Question was, how do you select container closure components like vials, stoppers, or syringe components? Do you make recommendations, or does the client dictate what you use? It's a two-way street for these. Similar to other raw material selections, we keep a fairly broad range of container closure selections, whether that's elastomers, crimps, and vials, glassware in-house. So those are readily available for our clients to choose from. We certainly make recommendations on what works best for our machinery. But if clients have a serious compatibility issue with an elastomer or glass, we can make do. We do sometimes run into lead times for elastomers in the current situation. Question 6, how do you coordinate your proposals on composition of excipients for the original preparation with your customers? Okay, so the clients that we mostly work with have a set composition for their products. We don't do drug development. So most of what we're receiving from our customers as a fill finish CMO is a set composition with all of the salts and excipients selected and identified. What we're doing is we're making sure that our raw materials meet the compendial specifications for their given product, and that the batch records are written appropriately. Question 7, does your team provide data integrity services under GMP SOPs? So our data generating items such as facility monitoring system, isolator, those sorts of pieces of equipment are validated to be compliant with the CFR for data integrity. I'm not sure what other services this question refers to. We do have a data integrity procedure that we would refer our clients to should they have any questions. How long does the pharmaceutical development of a biosimilar in cartridges, the known composition, take, and how much will the average cost of such development take? This question, so for drug development of a biosimilar, we would leverage our relationship with the drug development company. For cartridges, the lead time would be the glassware, depending on what vendor you want to use. But for a fill finish site such as our own, we could help with the selection of the cartridge through one of the major suppliers. The cost will vary on several things, so I can't really speak to the cost of such development. Do you fill devices or pre-fill unique vials for device insertion? We certainly do. We have a couple customers who have a unique vial for use in their own specification. We do work with clients who do medical device, and we even have customers who have their own custom glassware. So that's something that we certainly like to undertake, because it presents a unique problem for us, and that's something a challenge we look forward to. Do you ship product under quarantine while testing is being done? Similar to what we said in the first questions, we do only ship product under quarantine to follow-on sites that are previously approved by BSM. So currently that is Sharp and PCI. Those are both depot sites that will do follow-on packaging, labeling, and kitting, and they'll also do depoting and direct to clinical shipments. We have established quality agreements with those sites so that we can do that. Other shipments of products under quarantine are case by case, and we would discuss those with quality assurance on both sides. Okay. Which countries and regions do we have a GMP certificate from? So we don't maintain GMP certificates. We're an FDA regulated site, and we're inspected by the FDA. And since that is a reciprocal inspection, that we comply with both FDA and EU regulations. So that is all the questions and all of the time that we have. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for joining. If there's anything that you'd like to re-review, whether it's questions or slides, we will be making the recording of this and the questions available on our website for download and distribution at your convenience. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your week and a good weekend.